Hey everybody, this is Blaine C. Van, also known as the Happy Husband, and I want to thank you for tuning in tonight podcast. It's going to be a really exciting show, and I believe it's going to open people's minds about a lot of things, and also I believe it's part of the Great Commission is for setting the captives free. Tonight we have an awesome young man here. His name is Matthew Wilson. He's a family therapist, and he also works in the area of men who are addicted to porn, but also he talks about family matters, and he meets with married couples and stuff like that. So tonight, I sent the link in Facebook, and if you want to be part of the conversation, go ahead and hit that link, and let's go on. And or you can ask Matthew questions in the chat. I'll be monitoring tonight. And so if you want to ask a question, just go ahead and put it in the chat, and I'll try my best to get to it. And so also I want to just mention before we get started is that, the Happy Husband is here. The ministry of it is here, is to help husbands, is to help married couples, but mostly men. And so when I came across this young man who also liked to minister to men, I just believe that was God sent. And so, without further ado, this is Mr. Wilson. Hey, Mr. Can you introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Yeah, my name is Matthew Wilson. I'm a licensed counselor in the state of North Carolina. As you said, I do a lot of work with men, do a lot of work with couples, and I wind up seeing a lot of couples coming to me for the things men are coming to me for, which is, compulsive sexual behaviors, porn addiction, sometimes addicted to reaching out to other women through Instagram, Snapchat, those sorts of things, or even, actually behaviors with people other than their spouses, right? And kind of helping them understand what drives this behavior, what causes this behavior, and how can we change it? I think one of the things that I wrestle with a lot just in my own mind, and one of the things that drove me to the field that I'm in is, Paul in Romans 7 is talking about what he wants to do versus what he actually does. And he can't seem to rectify this. He can't seem to come up with the fact that there's a lot of things he wants to do that he can't do. I'm like, well, why would that be? Like, I think that there's a calling that we have, that there's a lot of information that's coming up as we're researching and we're learning more about the human condition, in both from the biblical sense and also from the psychological sense, that can help us to honor God more. So I do a lot of work there. I work with Awakening Center for Couples and Sex Therapy. I've been there for a couple of years. I grew up in the Chicagoland area, so if there's any Chicago listeners, shout out back home. And I should mention, as I'm on this podcast, Awakenings is filled with a lot of different people who think a lot of different things. I don't speak for the place that I work for. And it's important for me to recognize that. It's important for others too as well. If you like what I say, it's coming from me today. It's not from the place I work for. So
okay, that's a good disclaimer.
Yeah, very necessary. Very necessary. I was preparing to come on. They were like, "Make sure you say that." I was like, "I can do that. I can make sure that." Because if there's something they don't like that I say, then they can be like, "Yeah, that doesn't represent us." So yeah, absolutely.
So you spoke a little bit about how you got into the field, and so you read a scripture, kind of pricked your heart, and then what happened after that? What was you doing before you got into therapy, and how did you get into it?
Yeah, I think it's probably best even just to start by saying, like, I became a Christian not as a child. I didn't grow up in the church. I actually became a Christian at about 24 years old. I had a friend who introduced me to the gospel, introduced me to what it meant that we're sinners in need of grace. And, I slowly began that route. And as I was finishing school, it took me a little longer than most. I realized I wanted to do something for the Lord. What I wound up doing at that point was going on staff with a campus ministry, InterVarsity. And I worked as a staff member for InterVarsity for a couple of years. And what you primarily do there is you're talking to students one-on-one. Some of them
Sure.
are believers, and you're trying to disciple them and grow them and just kind of walk alongside them. And some of them are non-believers, and you're just trying to minister to them and help them understand the gospel. And as I was doing that job, I was day in, day out, just talking to people about the Lord, talking to people about the problems they have in their life. I was realizing that there are gifts that I have that God has given me in the way that I interact with people that fit more from a counseling perspective than a ministry perspective.
Sure.
I had to come to terms with the fact that I'm not a pastor. I'm not a teacher. I'm not a theologian, but I'm really good at meeting people where they are. I'm
Sure.
really good at actually just hearing their story and picking out a couple pieces and piecing it together and helping them make sense of things and just walking alongside them in that. And so as I realized that, I had a great supervisor, Colleen, who she looked at me and she said, I think this is a better fit for you. I would hate to see you go because I think you're great here, but I think you're better as a counselor. And so I applied to Trinity Evangelical Divinity School. Those are in the north suburbs of Chicago. They have a counseling program there that is both CACREP accredited, which is important from a counseling perspective.
Sure.
That's just the ACA thing that says that this university is putting out good counselors, and it helps with licensure down the line. And then it also has a track alongside it that blends theological, spiritual, and psychological thinking. So you actually have to come to terms with how do you integrate these things?
Sure.
How do you actually look at that? And that was something I really wanted to do, because I don't believe that you can do good, godly work separate from either one.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I went to school and graduated, and shortly after, decided to move down here to North Carolina, where I'm at now. And the rest, as they say, is history.
The rest is history. So we talked before about your clients that came in there. It was at 50-50. And so let's talk to us about the men's side and what are some of the questions men ask and when they come see you, like a typical session.
Yeah. You say like when it's just a man, not a couple.
Yeah, I like to talk about both of them tonight, to tell you the truth.
Sure. I'll start with just men, and then I'll go to kind of couples as
Sure.
well, with that question. Unless we go somewhere else, who knows?
Right.
But when I get a guy who comes in, generally the questions that are on his mind is, I know that watching pornography is a sin. I know that it is wrong. And that's especially from the Christian perspective. And I do get men who are not Christians who come to me and they say, this hurts my wife. And I know it hurts my wife. And therefore I can't keep doing this, but I still keep doing it. Mm-hmm. Whether it's a sin, whether they know it's wrong, whether it just hurts somebody that they really care about, they know it's something that they do that they can't seem to control. And they can't understand it because in so many other areas of life, they're in control.
Wow, that's good.
In so many other places, whether it's work or something, it's like, yeah, I do this, and this other thing. I go to the gym, but I can't seem to stop doing this one thing. I'm watching pornography. I'm masturbating. I'm reaching out to women on Instagram. I'm reaching out to women on Snapchat. And it's like, why am I still doing this? And, that I think is a potent question, but this is the problem is I don't know if there's good answers out there for them. That's I think what drives them to therapy.
Sure.
That's what drove me to therapy at one point, both for depression and also for for this problem. And I think that's what drives a lot of us to therapy is I can't seem to control myself in the way I'd like to. And the trick of it is that I don't think it's a control problem.
Wow.
And that's where I go with most of my men is I don't think that the problem is a lack of control because there's other areas where you have it. So what else could it be? And as we go down that rabbit hole, we can come to this point of saying that there's something that was missing, that's always been missing, that this pornography does a really good job at faking. One of the things I tell my clients
That's
all
the
the
point.
time. Yeah, it's like pornography is a great fake at the things that we want most in life, whether it's pleasure, whether it's a relationship. And I'd say, every substance that we use does its job exactly how we need it to. It's consistent, it's dependable, it's reliable in the thing that we need it to do. I actually drink 2 cups of coffee every morning because I know exactly what that caffeine is going to do in my system. And we don't think that's a bad thing. I might, and this is a Christian podcast, so who knows, but I'm okay with alcohol in moderation. I know what that first glass of wine tastes like and what it does to my system. For the alcoholic, they know exactly what that 5th one feels like too. And they get there, but they can't stop because it's so good. And it makes them feel the way they need to feel. And I think pornography does the same thing. I think it's slightly different for every man because we all have a unique story that God has written in our lives. But I think that there's something really important that every man who watches pornography, who's addicted to it, who struggles to put it down, who struggles to stop, there's something that's driving them to that. Because if it was just willpower, enough willpower to be able to do it. You could get to the gym. You can learn to wake up at 6 a.m. and get to the gym. How come you can't stop doing this?
Sure.
There's something deeper.
There's something deeper. So let me just follow this little rabbit trail is that, I watch other podcasts and I watch other things that's going on. So one is, I remember when I was a kid, I had to go through hoops to get some pornography.
Yeah.
I had to wait till my friend's father left the house. Then we had to go into his closet. Then we had to climb up there, and then we pulled on the Playboy. So and I remember my first Playboy magazine. I actually remember the very first one and who showed it to me. But what would you say about what's going on now in today's America, today's world, about the proliferation of pornography and the easy access to it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it reminds me right of my first time. It wasn't even a Playboy. It was a Victoria's Secret catalog. And
Sure.
I was just looking through it in the bathroom. I found it in a bathroom and, someone's mom had a Victoria's Secret catalog and just looking through it, all these models.
Right.
Yeah, it even in the 90s, it was a lot harder than it is today. The internet even wasn't that accessible. Now it's in the palm of your hand. And so, you can just go right to it. You can get what you need. It's easier than ever. And I think what that does, I think pornography's always done its job really well, whether it's been Playboy, a Victoria's Secret ad, a VHS tape way back in the 80s, or, any one of the sites that you can find it on now. It's always done its job really well. And part of its job is to hide what it even is doing. Because when you look at it, and it feels good, that this excites something in you, it's a little wrong, but there's some part of you that knows that this is meeting you in a way that you really want. And at least in my mind, what that does for a man who is really probably struggling in the world right now, just based on the way the world is going, whether it's hard to find work, it's hard to feel good about yourself. There's so many things that we have to keep up with. You name it, there's probably a half dozen or a dozen guys in your circle who are struggling with one thing or another.
Wow.
And nobody.
Yeah. No, that's true. Even in my circle, and then you mentioned that, yeah, I got some of my friends that really going through some hard times.
We always are. And I think pornography is sneaky enough to offer us something in that moment. I think it's sneaky enough to show us, hey, we matter. Hey, we're important. Hey, somebody like this can want somebody like you. Even when you're going through this, even when it's that bad. And it does its job really well. It does its job so well that you can't even realize how it's doing it. Right.
Wow, that's great. Just a minute. Hey, Matt, so everybody, listen up. You are listening to this young man here, Matthew Wilson. I keep calling him a young man. He's probably 50 years old. It looks good. But you can
I don't know about that.
Ask questions and directly to him or to me. So I want you to feel free to do that. And also, if you recapping this or listening again, email me, right? And you ask me questions that I can't answer, I try to find and forward it to Matthew. He is a licensed therapist, and he deals with men and family couples. So right now, we're talking about men who are addicted to porn. So, Matthew, would you say that these men are mostly married, singles, all types, every walk of life?
Yeah, all over the place. All over the place. You know, I get a lot of married men, primarily because I compare it to substances a lot because it operates similarly to substances.
Exactly, I agree. It's addiction.
It helps to clarify things, right? So alcoholics need to hit rock bottom, right? I think that's kind of something that they've seen. AA talks about what's your rock bottom, right? My father's was an alcoholic or is a recovering alcoholic. My brother's a recovering alcoholic. They battle it every day, right? And either one of them can tell you what their rock bottom was. I think that for men, seeing the way it hits their wife is a rock bottom.
Wow.
More so than how it's affecting them, right? If they're watching porn and masturbating 3 times a day and, you know, they're a little depressed because of it, they can't get out of bed, you know, they find it really challenging to go to work, to make a difference in lives, that sort of thing. I think they see it as a problem, but it's only when you begin to see how it affects somebody else that you're like, oh my goodness. I remember my dad telling me the moment he knew he had to change was we looked over at me and my brother holding each other. I was 3, he was 2, something like that. I don't remember it, but he said he was plastered drunk, and the look that he saw on my brother and I's face just hit him. It was the way it affected people. I think it's the same thing for pornography. Once you see the way it affects a life, the way that you think about if your children will see you with this, having to own up to that, it becomes a much more difficult thing to deal with within yourself. They've got to hit that somewhere. And I think that's why I see more married men, but I do see single guys too.
And that's why a single guy will even seek out help. That's wow. And great. That's great at the same time, because I do know that pornography devalues women. You know, it just makes them into a sex object. But that's me. What do you say?
As regards to like how pornography treats women?
Yeah.
One of the things that sits with me really heavy about the pornography industry is the fact that there's either one of 2 ways you go with this, right? You either have the unethical pornography, which is primarily, you know, women who are enslaved in some way, who are being abused or manipulated in some way. And then you have those who, on the other side, there's no abuse or manipulation, but it's still just a financial transaction for their body. And it really makes me wonder how, devaluing them. How are we valuing women? How are we looking at them?
Yeah.
And I think it brings up some really unjust and also power difference sort of things that I don't think we look at enough. And I can't. That's one of those. I could talk to you about it. I can't talk to a client about it.
Sure.
You know,
Hmm.
with a client that would be too much to say like, yeah, you're participating in a power imbalance, and it's an unjust way of meeting a need. Oh, that's a bit much for a client who's just struggling with the fact that they do this.
Sure.
Need to be further along in that journey.
Mhm. Do you find women being, and that's what I heard, but you do this every day, increasingly being addicted to porn? I do know, because of OnlyFans and other websites like that, they do use it as a source and a resource for money. But women are going to strip clubs now. Women are looking at porn. Have they always looked at porn? I don't think so. I but I'm hearing, through the grapevine that it is increasing. Have you noticed anything like that, or is this basically the same?
They don't come to me, probably because it's not a comfortable situation for them to come to a male therapist about that. So I'm not seeing an increase where I get women telling me, yeah, this is a problem for them. No, what I do know is that when I was in Chicago, the place I was at, I had a men's group, and they started a women's group, and the women's group filled out almost immediately. There were like 4 or 5 women right off the bat who were like, yeah, I want to be there. And so that tells me, yeah, there's something there. I don't think I can speak much to it though.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
But the good news is, if women are listening right now, that it's just not, even though I titled Men, Marriage, and Porn, that you have a place too around the table. You have a place too, and if you find yourself struggling, because one thing about anything that deals with the flesh, right? There's a lot of darkness to go with it, and that darkness can come into different areas. So, for instance, what are some of the ailments, right? I mean, right off the hand, I would think depression, but you might know
Yeah.
some other things that are going on with people.
Yeah. The elements that lead men to use pornography. That's
Mhm.
what yeah. I would say, I think depression is almost always co-occurring.
Wow.
Sometimes it's
This is my
anxiety.
first time ever hearing that. You know that. I mean, it makes sense. You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
I don't ever heard anybody
Yeah.
ever say linked up depression and pornography.
Well, you, there's a thing that happens with the use of pornography from a clinical perspective, so
Yes, sir.
psychologically speaking, where pornography is often used to make yourself feel good about yourself, at least from a man's perspective. I can't, we brought up women, so I'm going to clarify. I don't know why women use pornography. I know why men who struggle with it are continuing to go back to it. It makes them feel really good about themselves, which tells me that they don't feel good about themselves. And that is, in essence, like a cocktail for depression anyway. But now you have this thing that you feel like you need because it helps you feel good about yourselves. But 5 seconds after it's done, post-nut clarity kicks in, and you're like, I can't believe I just watched that. And now you feel bad about yourself again. So the shame cycle is what we call it, where you can't get out of this feeling of being ashamed of who you are, a feeling that there's something totally broken and wrong with you. And at the end of that, what else is there but depression?
Wow. That's something, man. And so my brothers out there are facing depression, and the depression will be a whole bunch of things. A medical report, or I mean, there's no end to the list will make a man depressed, right? So we can go down that road. But from a family, is the thing or things happen in a family that might lead a man to porn, like his wife is not fulfilling sexual needs, or maybe it don't matter. maybe she is feeling sexual need, and he's still hooked up to porn. And that's why she might be looking at him, cross eyes and say, well, I never turned you down. So what's the problem? And so,
and I'm not enough for you, right?
Yes. Right.
That's the refrain I hear from wives. Am I not enough? We were having sex 3 days a week. Isn't that's like your stereotypical number? You ask any guy on the street, most guys will be happy with 3 days a week. Why was it not enough? So what, from that family perspective, what is going on? This starts pushing us towards couples. And when we start looking at couples, we have to think about, what is it that we get into a relationship for in the first place? Why do men get into a relationship? Why do men get married? I'm curious, Blaine, what you would say to that. Why do men get married?
Oh, well, for my research and me and my life, there's few reasons why men get married. The first one is that men reach a time in their life between 23 and 36 where they want to go beyond. They want to go on in their lives, right? And so they might have finished school, they might have been in a job for 5 years, and they reach a certain economic position where they say, oh, I can add a wife now. I can add a child now. So that's like the number one driving factor, right? I can add into my life, right? So that's why I'm going to go ahead and get married, And then the second thing is, they want their name to continue on. They want a son, and I say they don't want a daughter, but they want a son too, and they want the Bradfords, the Wilsons name to go on,
Yeah.
So they want to establish a legacy, right? And then the other thing is much more selfish, is that they found a little lady and they don't want nobody else to have her.
Yeah.
Period. They lock it down. That's what we say. They lock it down with a ring. Now, it doesn't mean that they don't want to see nobody else, but they definitely don't want nobody to have her. Right? That's why men can get married and still cheat.
Sure.
And my own personal thing, I call it, this is my own personal, right, Matthew? I call it, a man want to have a harem. That's what he wants. He wants a harem. He want more ladies, and he want them all to himself, and he want to not circumcise, but he want to cut every male to get close to him. And men been like that for probably since the beginning of time. So those are the three main reasons that I find. It's really not, and love is in there somewhere, but a man's love in the beginning is different. He knows that a woman want to hear to say "I love you" to lock it down, and then I believe men grow in love over a slow period, but they do end up really loving their wives, man. I mean, and that's the truth of it. But in the beginning, when I found out the research, those are the top three things.
Yeah, progevity, keeping their line going, locking it down, and to some extent, I like that harem thing.
Yeah,
because it speaks to the power that I think men are striving for.
Yes,
and that's one of the ways that they're looking for is through, progevity, longevity with their line, and with having not just anybody, but high value.
Yeah.
women.
Yeah. I had a friend before you on my last podcast, and we talked about why men cheat, and he said something, and I said, that is so true. I know you said why men get married, but one of the reasons why I believe that men cheat is that the men who cheat are very good of seducing women. They're good at it. And it has nothing to do with looks. It has to do with techniques and methods, right? And so he still wants to be the man. Can he still pull a chick? Do he still have an in him, which is close to pornography is
Mhm.
very close to it, because instead of maybe, as a matter of fact, men who cheat look at pornography. I'm just, they say the correlation thereof. I got no papers in front of me to say it, but I'm listening to other psychiatrists. He said there's a correlation to that, and that men who cheat, they are dealing with a woman who don't even really like them like that, and they're using that body to masturbate, basically. They just, that's what they're really using it for. That's why they can go to women, like, no, but they love their wives, but they just using other women, as a sexual partner. But really, they say they not even, this is what I'm hearing, they not even really engaging in women anymore. They just masturbating. They just having a female in front of them just to masturbate, and that's the end of the act. Men, we got a bunch of stuff going on with us in this day and age. So, man,
Yeah.
so tell me about some of the married couples. What's some of the things that they struggle with?
I mean, you get into married couples, communication is going to be core to everything. You know,
Wow.
I get a lot. They have various things they argue about, whether it's finances or sex, not having enough sex. I mean, yeah, we see that. We're where I'm at. We're one of the places that's like, we advertise as sex therapists. We have certified sex therapists on staff, so it's obvious that anyone who works here is comfortable talking about sex.
Sure.
Right? Why I wanted to be here is because I'm comfortable talking to men about what's going on for them, and I'm comfortable talking to women about what's going on for them. They're not always comfortable with me, so I don't see a ton of them. But
Sure.
I want that to be known, especially from the Christian perspective. Like, hey, there's a place where we can deal with this. So we get a lot of couples coming in saying, hey, we haven't had sex in, I mean, you name the time frame. We've seen all over the place, and I've seen 5, 6, maybe 10 years if I'm thinking about it enough. They haven't had sex, or their sex has been lackluster for 2 decades. It's not been enough, and it feels like it's rote routine when it even does happen. So there's one part of it. At the end of it all, what I'm looking at is, are these people connecting? Are they actually hearing and understanding each other?
Mm.
Because I think, kind of going back to like, what are people looking for in a relationship? I think men and women have their own specific things, but I think what everybody wants is to feel important to at least one other person in this world. To feel like they really matter to one other person in this world.
Which
And
is the marriage. Yeah.
That's your marriage. At first, it's your parents when you're growing up, and then it's your marriage. If your parents don't make you feel good about yourself, there's a lot of stuff that goes wrong later in life.
That's true. That is absolutely true.
And so there's this sort of thing, is we're still looking for that, even as we're dating and we're married. And when we don't get it, when we don't feel important, that's when we start fighting for importance. You wonder why wives are nagging all the time. And it's a stereotype that is about 90% true. It's kind of one of those, it's like, yeah, you're going to have that 1 in 10 that is the silent one instead of the nagger. And then the husband is the one kind of chasing after the wife in some other way. But by and large, we have that stereotype because it does exist. The woman is looking for some sort of proof that she matters, and she's looking at the house. She's looking at what he's doing for her. She's looking at all of these things. And then the husband is looking for things that tell him he matters, that he's important, and he's looking at 9 times out of 10 primarily at sex or some sort of physical, act of service, or he might also be looking at the way that she talks to him or approaches him. Yeah, we had this interesting thing. The owner of the company shot out this text and was like, of your heterosexual couples, like what percentage, and we use these terminology, pursuer and withdrawer, right? The pursuer is trying to engage in conversations, engage in things that bring up problems in order to solve them. Whereas the
Mhm.
withdrawer is like, we just need to let things go. If we could just kind of move past this, then everything would be okay. And so, kind of what percentage of your heterosexual couples, the female is the section or the emotional with pursuer, so she's pursuing emotional topics, and the sexual withdrawer, she's kind of like, okay, if there's a sexual problem, we don't need to talk about this. And
Really?
the man is the emotional withdrawer. If something emotional gets brought up, he's like, hey, yeah, we're just gonna, can we just let this go? But the sexual pursuer, if there's a problem sexually, he's gonna bring it up. And it's funny, like that group text, 85, 90%, 85, 85, 90, like is just nonstop. Every one of us, and it's not a research study. It's not a any sort of reaching out kind of survey, but it was pretty telling to me that we have some stereotypes about where women fall and where men fall along that spectrum in communication and connection.
Hmm.
Pretty reputable reasons why we have those stereotypes.
Sure. Scripture talk about in Proverbs about the nagging wife. And so, I always think about that
Yeah.
the Lord seen it fit to put it into the Bible that there is such thing as a nagging wife. Like
Yeah.
biblical, there's a nagging wife, right?
Yeah.
And so I think about that, and I think, 'cause obviously, I think about marriages a lot, and I think about couples a lot. And when I'm out about doing my routine, going to the store, and I see couples, or I might see a man or a woman with a head hang down or something, I also wonder, like, from the outside, she looks like a good catch. And one of the things that women complain about is that men ghost them, right?
Yeah.
They say, I was seeing him, and all of a sudden he stopped calling me out of the blue. And then I also hear a lot about women saying, my husband does this, my husband does that. And they like they rail on him like so bad. And he said, he cheated on me. And then the lady goes, well, I never cheated on him. I said, yeah, but do you rail on him day and night? Like, just because you don't cheat doesn't make you a good spouse.
Right.
This other ways that you can look. The Bible said you drive him from you. Now, because it's his responsibility what he do when he's driven away. So the Bible suggests you go to the rooftop. Right? To me, that means the dare stand. You go somewhere else. It's not supposed to drive you to the bar or drive you to pornography or to a porn site. That's when the man got to exercise self-control and find. And I'm going to talk to you. Find what's really missing in his life. But marriage difficulties, like the only reason why people get divorced ain't just because a man cheats. That's that's not the only reason. And it could be fruit. I'm not sure about that, but I won't get nobody off a hook or get them off the hook. So let's go back to the men for instance. So what are some of the remedies? You have a man who's come to you, 35, 40 years old. We're married 5, 6 years. And I'll give you a case scenario like in college.
I just thought of somebody in my mind after you said that. I'm like, oh, I've got the client. I know who that was.
Yeah. So he's coming to you. All right, Matthew, do your thing. Where do we go?
Let me just kind of walk you through where I'm going to go with this guy, right? The first thing I'm going to do is I want to make him really comfortable with the idea that there's a part of him that loves watching pornography. Otherwise, he wouldn't keep going back to it. There's a part of him that wants to be doing this, even if the most of him doesn't. And then we're going to start talking to that part of him. We're going to talk to that part of him that wants to be watching pornography and say, what is it doing for you? What are you getting out of it? Because there's something there, right? That's what I started with at the beginning. There's some part of this that is giving you something that you're not getting anywhere else. Wow. And only the part of you that loves it is going to tell us what that is. So let's get comfortable with it. Let's talk to that person. And as that part of you, the part of you that really enjoys watching pornography, starts talking to us about what he's getting out of it that he's not getting anywhere, we're going to get a fuller picture of what's going on in your life. We're going to get a fuller picture of what you're missing. And then we can ask, okay, what can we do differently? What can we do differently about this? Is there something wrong in your relationship? You're not getting what you need. Is there something wrong in your workplace? You don't feel as respected as you want to, and pornography makes you feel respected. Is there, some part of your life way back in the past that hurt so bad that you can't even remember and begin to deal with it? Blocked it for so long, and that's happened quite a bit. I've one client in particular that I started to go down that path with, and it just crumpled in the first session. I was like, no, it's too early for this. But he crumpled. He crumpled because he'd been hanging on to this childhood pain
Wow.
for so long. And there you go. And 6 sessions in, it's completely in a different place. Not always that easy. But let's get comfortable with the fact that this is a thing that at least some part of you wants to be doing. Because if there was no part of you that wanted to do it, you wouldn't do it.
Right.
So that's going to be our entrance into what are you getting and how can we do something different about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That must be hard to pin that down, though. To me, that's like a little scary little dark creature, man, hiding in all the crevices, all the darkness,
Mm-hmm.
and he wants you to find it, but he might not be forthcoming, especially if it's childhood trauma.
Yeah. It's been blocked for years. How do they even remember? They don't. It does. It can take 20, 30, 40 sessions of just kind of continuing to put my finger right on that same spot again and again and again. Yeah, we're not paying enough attention to this. Yeah,
Right.
The thing that you said that revealed a little bit, but you're not giving me more. There's something right there. Just bring it right back to that again and again. Kindly, lovingly, but refusing to let go. I think that's to some extent my job is a little bit like a dog with a bone, like refusing to let go of, there's this thing and I'm going to keep you focused on it. And you mentioned this thing. Let's stay right there. I'm going to keep I know you want to go away from it right now. I know you'd rather tell me the story about this thing, but I'm going to bring you right back here.
Mm-hmm.
For one reason, because you pay me a little bit too much for me to let you go on a tangent.
Sure.
And then for the other reason is because I care enough to make sure that we don't leave this place.
Sure.
And that part of that is hard for me, right? There are days when I'm on and I get that and I'm like, yeah, right back. Nope, I'm sorry. We're going to go right back here. And then there's other days where I'm just like, oh, it's been a long day. Okay, get it back in there. And I give it a little bit of space. And, I think that happens to all of us. But
sure, absolutely.
To keep going.
I'm a school teacher. I mean, most of the time, 99%, I'm on them. But, in a couple of days, they said, Mr. Van, can I go to the bathroom for like the 3rd time? And I'm like, well, just go. Just I get you tomorrow. I tighten up you tomorrow. Just go. You wore me down. Hey, everybody, this is Matthew Wilson. He's a family therapist, and also his place that he works at also deal with sexual matters. And he's said, but half of his practices, and half of them are men who are addicted to porn, and also family matters too, that runs the whole gambit. And so I just want you to know that he is available, and you can always reach out to him. And he's at Awakening Family Therapy Center. But I will give you a chance in a few more minutes to really lay out how they can contact you if they want to. One of the things, Matthew, when I was looking at this pornography thing, and we talked about how it's so easy, available, but our children are now into pornography.
8 years old.
Right.
That's the average age.
Yeah. Okay. So can you just talk about the children at 8 years old? What trauma do they have? Right. What hidden thing? They only been on this planet for 8 years.
Well, and that's if you had a person come to your 8-year-old and actually show them something sexual, you would call that at the very least sexual harassment of a child.
That's true.
But if they showed your 8-year-old pornography, what is that?
Exactly.
And
What?
what is it? Is it the same thing? It feels that way a little bit. Because I know we've got our first coming in July. And I know if that little boy comes to me and he tells me at 8 years old that somebody showed him something and he shows it to me and it's pornography, I'm going to lay people out.
Yeah.
Because an 8-year-old doesn't need to worry about that. Now, stuff is going to come up. I'm going to be prepared for the conversation. I know, like, I'm going to have that conversation easily enough. It's my job. I talk to people about sex all day. I'm not going to be worried about that. What I'm worried about is what does it mean for his life? It's on his mind at a young age.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a good answer to that question other than,
Sure.
what, do you hide kids? Do you refuse to let them even on the internet? Do you refuse to let them watch any television program? I don't think that's realistic. There doesn't seem to be good answers, but there's certainly a lot of problems. I don't know what the answer is with it. I know it makes me feel like my job is secure, and I don't like that because I'd much prefer to be working myself out of a career here.
Sure.
I don't want to keep having to see people that are struggling with this.
Sure.
But it certainly seems like a recipe for it.
And one of the things is, because all my children are grown, and one of the things is definitely communication. And what I mean by communication is, I had a father call me for one of my students, and this young man is interested in a certain career path. So he called me up. He said, "Mr. Van, we want to nurture my son in this trade. What can we do that he can go further on? What can we do to make sure he be successful and that we're not hindering him any other way?" And so the pat answer is like, man, put him in some STEM programs, and you can put him in this program right here, and you can watch him, blah, blah, blah. So I'm sitting there, and before I open my mouth, like the Lord really spoke to my heart. And the Lord said, tell him just to be a good father. You want to nurture your son? It doesn't make a difference what career path. You don't have to do anything special. So I told him, hey, take your son out and play with him in this area. Don't send him to no program, right? And so that's going to be, for fathers like us, it's like, you take him fishing, and I mean fishing as a different from soccer, because soccer, he's busy. So the only time you get a chance to talk is to the game and back from the game. So you got to take a place where it's just you and him. Even if it's something as simple as, look, son, I collect pine cones in the hills of North Carolina. Let's go do our thing. And that is going to give your son and daughter opportunities to go past the real surface questions and really to get into something deep. And so that's going to be the protection, because one day you be out there doing something and your son's going to look at you and go, Dad, I want to tell you that I was over Mr. Griffin's house and he showed me something. He ain't going to tell you that over pie.
No.
It just, and he's not going to tell you on the way to soccer. So our protection for our son is always going to be being a good father. It's always going to be, and being a father who's there in place, right? Not just with a title. And so when you're dealing with these men that are coming to you, when you're dealing with these men, do they have issues with the parents? Is that something common? Or is it just with the marriage life, or they got divorced and they're from multiple, or is it just all over the gambit? Like, what do you see most of? Like, boy, if somebody comes here is divorced, he says and such like this, he probably, is there anything like that?
Well, I mean, 95% of men are watching pornography anyway. So I don't need to try to figure it out based on did this happen or did that happen. Like, he's probably watching porn. The
You
question
said
is whether or not
5% men right now?
I think that's the number. It's 90 or 95%. It's
So
really
you're
high.
not talking about clientele. You're talking about
Anybody, yeah. The only question is whether or not somebody sees it as a problem in their life. And then until they do that, there's nothing I can do for them. So it's just a question of, is it a problem? And at that point, you know, most people are watching porn because everybody watches porn.
wow.
If you don't have an example of somebody not watching it, if even your father had Playboys under his bed, if everywhere you turned, everybody is, just going as far as they can, sexually speaking, whether that's with pornography or heck, millennials are all over the place in terms of what hookup culture looks like. And, you talk about ghosting. Ghosting is, in and of itself, it's hard for me to understand it because I didn't grow up with that. I grew up
Right.
with you sit down with somebody and you say, listen, this is not going to work. I'm sorry. I appreciate our time together. It's not going to work. And then you move on. Ghosting is just, people are sleeping together and then ghosting. They're having one night stands and ghosting one another. It's really wild out there. And it makes me really, it makes me really grateful to be married because I don't have to be out on that dating scene. It makes me grateful to be a Christian, to be a believer who has this set of values that drives my behavior, and I has a set of values that drives whoever I'm meeting's behavior. But it also just makes me sort of accept there's this kind of standard that's out there that I'm going to presume most men are watching pornography.
Wow.
And if they're
Man,
not,
you said that, it hurt my heart. I didn't know it was up to 95%. Literally, when you said that, it hurt my heart.
I'll have to get my numbers like perfectly aligned if I'm going to be like on podcasts talking about this more often, because I know it's high. I want to say the last I read it was 90 or 95, but do not quote me on it because I don't have a exact.
Don't worry, I'm gonna go. But
yeah.
I get it though. Now what you're saying is unbelievable high. I can live with that.
Mhm. Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Wow. Wow.
So I just presume if a man comes into the office, he is. And I often ask the question in my intakes as I'm getting to know a couple, if I sit down with a man, you watch pornography, right? How much pornography do you watch? Do you think this is a problem? Does your wife know? Does she think it's a problem? Because those are going to tell me a lot about the relationship. And so going back then, because I took your question a little bit on a sidetrack there, but your question was what's driving it? What's driving men to be watching pornography as they are? And I think it's a lack of connection, and it doesn't have to be with a spouse. I think it's a lack of connection just in general. And so what I think is one of the major cures is, okay, understanding what piece of that connection is. Is it a connection point at work, feeling important enough at work, feeling connected like you matter there, feeling like you matter here? I don't look at feeling like you matter as a terrible thing. I think as Christians, we wrestle with this kind of humility and mattering sort of thing, right? I think we should be humble about who we are, but we also need to know that we matter to other people. We need to know that people care about us. I think that's a normal need. And that's, I think, the need that is often met the least in a man who's watching pornography. He doesn't feel important to anybody. And if you can begin to help him start reaching out to people, and usually the first step is with me. He's sitting here with me. He's having a conversation with me where I'm able to just empathetically and openly engage with him about this thing that's been painful, that feels like it's shameful all the time. Well, now we can have at least one open conversation, and can we build that into others? So it's a good time to say, one of the things I'm thinking about, and if there's any men out there interested in something like this, please reach out. I'm planning on getting groups started at the office that I work for. I work virtually and I work in office at the Greensboro location.
So tell us your information before we go. How can I reach for you?
You can email me. It's mwilson, WILSON at awakenings with an S at the end, center.org. That's my email. Feel free to reach out anytime. You can also text or call me, and I have just a Google Voice number for work, 517-336-517-7120.
Can you type that in the comments? You have that capability?
Yeah. It's having me do this whole sign-in thing.
Okay. Don't sweat it. You text me, I put it out.
Yeah, I'll text you and you can do that, because I think groups are a great way for that shame cycle to be defeated, to feel comfortable enough to go there with other men. I think some of the work that you're doing, to be able to even talk about it and to hear other guys talking about this is really powerful. And I think one of the last things I'll say, because I see the time there, I know we're just about there. If it doesn't feel like a problem, if the way that you use pornography doesn't feel like a problem, I wouldn't stress too much about it. There will be a day it might, and then call me. Because until you're ready to deal with it, I mean, I can't do anything anyway.
Right.
I tell all my clients that. I was like, there's three factors that help counseling go well. Our relationship, the counselor and the client, that's the first one. The second is client's motivation. That's on you. I want you to come in motivated. I'm telling you that. And then the third is that the counselor is using techniques and theories that have been proven and researched to be effective. So if we hit those three, we're going to do well. And so the second one there, if you don't have the motivation, wait till you do, because God will reveal it to you. It will be revealed through the way your wife reacts to it. It will be revealed through the way somebody reacts to it in your life. And then you'll be ready. And when you're ready, you'll know. God makes it clear. And then give me a call or find another therapist in your area. Find somebody you trust to work with you and walk with you through this. Because it's not easy.
Amen. One of the names of God is Counselor. And so, and God is a God that uses all type of methods to be healed, right? We know that he spit in mud. He poked somebody in his ear. Elijah actually laid on top of somebody. And so there's all type of methods that God used. And this is also a method, I believe, that God used, and that is a counselor. And, the Bible is real clear about seeking godly wisdom, very clear, and how kings get counseled before they make war. And so this is just another avenue, and let me just say, like, if we got a minute, if you went to church and you went down the aisle and they laid hands on you and you left and you still dealing with pornography, well, that method didn't work. I'm not saying that it doesn't work. I'm just saying that method didn't work for you, right? And so know that God has other avenues that might be right down your alley.
Yeah.
I also want to encourage you, again, I'm going to go back what you said, Matthew, it hurt my heart, man, 95%. I'm telling you, it hurt my heart, man. It really did. And then you linked it to men not finding maybe value in the lives of themselves.
Really good way of saying that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I'm sitting here going, tonight, and I'm not gonna hold you to 95, right? I mean, I'm not gonna perfect, but it's 98. Even if it was 88, right?
I'm gonna Google it and I'm gonna text you the number.
Yeah, I mean, it don't matter, but what does matter to me is that 95% of the people are hurting. 95% of the people are lonely. 95% of people are missing the mark in their lives. 95% of men are not finding the value of their lives. You know, they're not finding it in work. They're not finding it in the marriage. They're not finding it. And Jesus said, these folks are lost. These folks are lost. And so you used to think lost was maybe they robbing a bank or something like that. But lost is that men can't find their way in this earth. They literally are lost. And I believe that shining lights like you, Matthew, that's out there, you know, even though it's your job, but shining lights like you, you know, it got that torch out in pitch blackness. And I'm praying, you know, really, Matthew, over your life that men and women will see that torch, man, and they will go to it. They will actually run to it. And so the marriage be saved and the dignity be saved, and that the cycle, right, of shame will be broken in their lives. And so, Matthew, we got 1 minute. Can you just pray us out and just kind of pray for these guys?
Let me do it. Let me do it. Heavenly Father, I thank you for this time with Blaine. I thank you for the Happy Husband podcast. I thank you for the ways that you have been working through him, particularly for husbands, but it really sounds like for families and for men of God who are seeking after you, Lord. I pray for those who are stumbling in various ways. We've talked a lot about pornography tonight, Lord, but I think about so many men who are struggling. They get home and the first thing they do is crack open a beer, man. God, there's so many men who are really and truly hurting and they're covering up. Lord, I pray that you would help them go to you.
Yes, God.
Take that heart that is hurting, go to you and bring it to the cross and ask, God, what do you want me to do with this? And if it's, Lord, if it's come to counseling, help them to have the bravery to do it. If it's just to submit further to what you have for them, help them to do it. If it's to open up to their spouse, help them to do it. Give them the courage and the strength to be the men that you've called them to be. Lord, I pray for each and every man listening and for families of those men, God, that those men would have the courage and the strength to be who you created them to be and not an ounce less. Lord, I thank you and praise you and pray in your name. Amen.
Amen. Young man, appreciate you coming on. God bless you.
I'm so grateful to be here.
Everyone, if you like this show, go ahead and put it out in the comments. If a question comes up, you know, but also if you need prayer, listen, you can email me or text me privately. You know, my number's on my Facebook page, and you can say, hey, you just give me initials and say, I'm struggling in this area and I just need your help. And don't worry about the shame of it. Do not worry about that, you know. And so, you know, God's here and his power is available to deliver you from anything, for anything you might find yourself tied up again. Again, Matthew, thank you for being with us. And hopefully we stay connected and we can do other shows.
Absolutely. Love to.
All right. Bye-bye. Talk to you later.
Bye.